participants, please feel free to fill them in the chat section. Hanan has organized some people to facilitate the questions, and later on at any point in time I will stop for a break and then ask if we could fill some questions, but otherwise we will leave them for much later on in our 90-minute section. So I have the privilege of kicking off this much necessary boot camp, which I think for me really enlightens me and really gives me much joy around this topic around the future of work. Why I think it's important is because we all need to remain incredibly curious and also be responsible about how are we going to drive ourselves forward from a career perspective. How are we going to ensure that when we go into a much more machine-led future, we don't end up having skills that are redundant. I mean, I think back 10 years ago when I went and enrolled in an MBA, and it's, you know, for the longest of time has been one of the most valuable courses or credible that one can do. But I stand to question whether the learnings that I gathered through the program are still relevant. That is why boot camps like this are essential towards helping us to ensure that we acquire skills that can be tangible and can be utilized in now and as well as in the future. I'm going to now just share my screen with you and drive my PowerPoint slide. I've got about 21 of them, but don't worry, they're going to go nice and quick. But the most important thing is to get as much questions and insights from you so that we can be able to facilitate the conversation more effectively. Okay, so my hope is that everybody can see the slides. Okay, so welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining us on this conversation. So like I said, my name is Musidi Modise. I am streaming in from the lovely Cape Town, city of Cape Town in South Africa, and I will be providing you the class on analytical thinking and innovation. So about I think I'm just going to touch on, I'm not going to touch on I'll touch on a few things, but I think Hanan touched on them as well around the aim about the Skills for Skills program. So as they said, it is initiated by the Global Shapers Marrakesh Hub in partnership with Moore, and it was inspired by the World Economics Forum Future of Jobs report, where it gave us food for thought around how should we be rethinking around driving our careers going forwards, given this fourth industrial revolution that is now here as a result of COVID, and what skills do we need to attain to ensure that we remain relevant and we have skills that equip us for the jobs that are to come. Okay, so this report was published in 2018, and it highlights how the workforce and employment, the key areas of impact will change now as well as in the future. And then due to COVID-19, we know that the future of work is now here. And then the most important thing is how can we be proactive around ensuring that we have skills that are relevant for this changing future of work. So just as in a nutshell, I'm an entrepreneur by profession. Hanan greatly outlined like what my area of skills or expertise are. So I'm an entrepreneur by profession, currently growing and scaling 2 businesses. So one is running a creative strategy advisory firm called Moop, and then also developing a tech solution that will be good, that my hope is that it will be good for society, especially for women. I'm a Global Shapers alumni, founding curator of the Stellenbosch Hub, and have been actively involved in the community for over 6 years. I'm also actively involved or curious about the future of work. So I'm not coming in here as an expert, but only just somebody who is merely curious about the future of work and was happy to step up to the challenge around providing this class around the future of work. Please feel free to reach out after this course. My email is info@moop.co.za, and you are welcome to link up with me on LinkedIn. Invite me, Musidi Modise. So what we will cover on this session, I'm going to take you through some introduction and context around this title, this conversation around the future of work. And then secondly, I will also highlight the importance of why we need to think strongly about analytical thinking and innovation. And then I will drill deep into the fundamentals of analytical thinking as well as innovation. And then I will also provide you with some useful resources that you can refer to post this session around understanding the two topics. We will also give some time in the end to just give you some concluding remarks, as well as also address any questions that anybody may have. So just to start, I think it's very well outlined and highlighted that the future of the jobs are going to look very different now. Well, jobs are already looking very different now. So in this report that the World Economic Forum published, it highlights that 133 million new jobs in major economies will be created to meet the demands of the fourth industrial revolution. And there's a lot of more work that is being developed as a result of this report as we speak. I highly recommend that if you have not read the report, go through it. It is available online. Just Google Shaping the Future of Jobs report published by the World Economic Forum in 2018. Part of the reasons why these changes are happening is that they are driven by the technological transitions that are taking place. And we see now that with COVID-19, this pace of these tech transitions has been extremely accelerated. Many of us a year ago did not imagine a future or a current reality where we are working from home. But here we are now. But most importantly, this report highlights what are these top 10 emerging industries. So it was 5 years ago that the report was published, and it looked into the future being 2022, 2 years from now. What jobs will be relevant and which ones are irrelevant. So the main objective of this masterclass or bootcamp is to highlight what are some of those skills that many people need to equip themselves on so that they remain employable and relevant. And then, so I'm going to be unpacking analytical thinking and innovation. Why are these two topics important? The first reason is that a lot of evidence shows how artificial intelligence will change the world of work. So much that machines will be able, there's a lot more that machines will be able to do as a result of digitization and mechanization. Artificial intelligence is a very broad term, but the one we can with clarity refer on is this one called artificial narrow intelligence. That's the one we grapple with every day. So if you think of things like Google Maps, things like Siri, that is a great example of machines helping us through algorithms to function better and be more productive and get to the end goal much quicker and more efficiently. But this influence of artificial intelligence is going to become more richer. There's going to be more use cases where we will evolve towards what we call artificial super intelligence, where machines and humans become alike. But that's most importantly to note is that we are not there yet, but we will evolve into that future. So what's most important for people to think about is that as we evolve into this future of work, we are going to be paid to think than to do, because the machine is going to be just as smart as a human to get tasks done. So we won't be able to, but one thing to note is that machines will not always be able to get it right all the time. So it is important to learn how to challenge the status quo, to ask yourself, is this algorithm that the machine is generating correct for the problem at hand to give me the solution? And so that's why solving problems using analytical thinking and innovation is going to be important. So just to give a narrow or defined definition of analytical thinking and innovation. So analytical thinking is pretty much how do you get about solving problems, number one. But Wikipedia describes it as the ability to deconstruct information into smaller categories in order to draw conclusions. Analytical skills consist of categories that include logical reasoning, critical thinking, communication, research, data analysis, and creativity. So what this means is that analytical thinking hinges on a number of key priorities that most of us have to probably apply in our day-to-day job. It just kind of contextualizes it in such a way that we can be able to think about it, get good at it, and then learn to master how to use it for good. The other thing is this notion of innovation. So innovation is quite a broad topic that many people it's all relative how we interpret it or understand it. But innovation is pretty much how you go about coming up with ideas. So Wikipedia highlights it as innovation being a new idea or creative thoughts, new imaginations in a form of device or method. Innovation is often viewed as the application of better solutions that meet new requirements, unarticulated needs, or existing market needs. So I'm going to spend the next couple of minutes unpacking each of the topics, and we'll start with analytical thinking. So in terms of analytical thinking fundamentals, analytical thinking is pretty much, like I said, how do we go best upon getting to the answer to a problem being solved? So I'm going to give you a detailed review around how some key methods that you can use. These are not the silver bullets, but it's just, I thought it would be two great ones to unpack just to give you some food for thought, but it is important to continue to learn and go find means and other ways by which you can approach analytical thinking. So the first method that I quite like and like to use regularly is when you have a problem at hand, there's 3 steps to follow in terms of developing your analytical thinking. The first thing that you need to do is learn how to unpack the underlying root cause. And then secondly, identify techniques that you can use to facilitate the ease of thinking through these problems. And then the most important thing is that you have to get good at it by practicing analytical thinking. Good analytical thinkers are masters of it, and mastery requires ongoing practice. So just to start, in terms of the first part, how we unpack the root cause. The first methodology that we can refer to is the one called the 5 whys. I like using the 5 whys because it's simple and it is logical, and you can never go wrong in terms of being able to unpacking problems using this methodology. This method was actually discovered by the guy who founded Toyota, the automobile, but now conglomerate from Japan, or I think South Korea, that has been able to time and time again innovate, problems and solutions to make our lives easier. So Mr. Toyota came up with a solution where he challenges us: when you are faced with a problem, ask yourself the 5 whys. I really like it because the reason why you can easily use it is that you take a problem and then you use the 5 whys to unpack it. So the first step is identify the root causes of the problem by asking, why did the problem occur in the first place? And then the second thing is, for each cause you identified, note them and ask why once again. Why does this problem happen? The third step is to ask yourself, have you asked why at least 5 times? You can actually use the why methodology to actually not have 5 whys, but 15 or 20 whys. You can use the why solution as often as possible to be able to get to the logical root cause. Once you've found the logical root cause, go through the solutions and then go through the root cause identified. If you still haven't come to the right answer, begin again, and begin again. And the most important thing to highlight around using this methodology is that it is best designed or used in a team, because decisions that are unanimous are not always the ones that have the most kind of information or devices to come into the solution. So the 5 whys is a great way to unpack the root cause of the problem when it comes to analytical thinking. So I'd like to take you through a tangible example that I used on my own with a real life experience where I actually use the 5 whys. So this year I made a decision to start my own business, Pivot Ventures. And then I thought about the 5 whys indirectly, actually. I have a life coach that I go through. And at the heart of it is that, throughout every single session, we were using the 5 whys to actually help me pluck up the courage to take the leap of faith to start my own business. So just as an example, this is how I used it. So the key question I asked was, why do I want this? Being, why do I want to start my own business? So the first thing was, I knew that it is the one path that is aligned with my key objective in life, which is to attain as much freedom as I can possibly have. And then I asked the question again, but why do I want to do this? I said, I've always wanted to have the flexibility and the choice in what I can focus on in terms of a work perspective. So starting my own business would be the why. And then I went again to ask, why do I want this? I know that I will have the latitude and can channel my own creative ability in the work that I choose to focus on and the value that I choose to provide to the market versus being employed. And then I went again to ask, but why do I want this? I knew that it would teach me how to be disciplined and to be consistent, because the journey of an entrepreneur, you don't have a choice but to always be consistent and to be disciplined, because you are your own boss and you are accountable to your stakeholders. Therefore, you cannot drop the ball, unlike in an environment where you are employed, and then there's always means and ways to buffer the risks. And then the last question was the one that was most important for me, that why do I want this? I think for me, it is the one area where I can identify several opportunities to attain financial freedom. Why is financial freedom is important? Because it is the one way where you can create the utmost impact at your own choice and be able to deploy your resources in such a way that it can uplift your own life and the lives of others. So with my aspirations to be able to be a philanthropist one day. So this is a good basic example of where I used the 5 whys in a logical way, but I could go on forever in terms of asking these questions. So the main objective here, what I'm trying to show you, is that if you ever have a problem to tackle, always start with your whys, but make sure that you are doing it collaboratively. So this methodology is actually very useful in business, whereby you can actually apply it by following this procedure by which you, if you have a problem to solve as a team, start with inviting all the people that are affected. So for instance, right now in this very volatile environment where there's a lot of uncertainty and complexity as a result of COVID, and your problem, your business unit or your problem, your company may be experiencing certain problems to solve, you can ask yourself, when it comes to using the 5 whys, who are the custodians of this decision? So who are the people that you need to have in the room to kind of unpack the 5 whys the problem exists? And then also most importantly is you must select a meeting leader. So somebody who will facilitate the process and make sure that the decisions being made or the problems being aligned are inclusive. And then the most important thing is, to me, the meeting leader must use something like a whiteboard, and it must be a brainstorming exercise. So it's not just one person having the solution to the problems. We must all be able to have a stake in the room where we are able to answer the questions. And then the third thing is that start with a problem statement. So ask why 5 times. And then after you've come up with the logical possible answers or the problem statements, then find a way to assign responsibilities for solutions. So you actually have to go away and, as a collective or as individuals in a group, go and unpack it further. And then once you've done your work in terms of unpacking the problem further, use the methodology to be able to report back to the team and then bring your problems together to synthesize a logical solution that you can be able to take forwards to use techniques to solve the problem. So the crux of the 5 why methodology is that it is a problem-solving mechanism, trying to help you to get to the root cause of it. And it is part of the way by which you can apply analytical thinking. If there's any questions at that point in time, please feel free to field them. And then I will ask the coaches or the other facilitators to just give me feedback, and I'm happy to take the questions as we go. It seems like I'm moving much faster than anticipated. I have a question.
Mostly, if I may, I've just mentioned that all the participants can use the feature of Q&R, and I'll handle all the questions and give them back to you either in the middle of the workshop or by the end of the workshop. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Have we got any questions so far that I can field? Because we
for now, no. Yeah. Just a very positive feedbacks and reaction on the conversation side, but okay. No specific questions. But okay. Please feel free, if you have any questions, you can use the Q&R feature. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. And yeah, any questions or any suggestions, if anybody has come across any body of work that supports the 5Y methodology, please feel free to share in the group. And then the Global Shapers Marrakesh Hub will distribute that information. Okay, so the next thing we're going to move into is what are the useful analytical techniques we can use in terms of analytical thinking. So we first just outlined that it is important to understand that this is analytical thinking is a way by which you can distill problems into manageable tasks or manageable components to come to a solution. So the 5 whys is a way in which you can distill the problem. And then now we're going to move into techniques to go about solving for the solution. So there are many out there that are usable, but the one that I find myself always going back to when it comes to like consulting assignments and so forth is the bottom up as well as the top up approach. So if you have a really chunky, big, hairy problem to solve for, I believe that using the bottom up approach as well as the top down approach is always one of the ways by which you can be able to distill a big problem or a solution to solve into manageable chunks. So I'll start with a top-down approach, which is the one that I tend to be most comfortable with. So I sometimes have to help a lot of my clients understand big, gnarly problems. So one, for example, is, that I'm currently dealing with now is, help us how we can be able to develop a strategy given our industry and our context to future-proof our business from a human capital perspective. So given all these changes that have resulted as a result of COVID, how do we pivot our business if we need to in terms of our human capital strategy? What do we need to look into from a best practice perspective? What are other companies doing out there to be able to adapt with the current norm as they move into this new normal? So I used this top-down approach to look at it. So I looked at the total body of work that is being done at a country or future or work perspective and tried and distill to them around what are the trends that are happening, what are the things to look for. And then I went further down to say, okay, you are in this specific industry. What's important for you to be aware of is this is the shifts and trends that are happening within your industry. And then I had enough information to distill from a company perspective. These are some of the key considerations around your current strategy. And then these are the things that need to happen or need to change. And then obviously a human capital strategy impacts individuals. So I also gathered a body of thought and gave them some information around these are some of the best practices around how individuals are adapting to the new normals. So this notion of remote working, these are best practices from certain specific companies or sectors. So these are the things to look at. So that is the top-down approach where you actually instill a question from looking at it from a broad perspective and narrowing it down to whatever situation at hand is involved. And then the bottom-up approach is the opposite, where you actually start from looking at the problem, in my case, from the individual perspective to say, this is how COVID is affecting the individual. And then if you look at your company, your industry that you're operating in, these are some of the changes and some of the trends that you need to consider. And then you go down a certain layer to say, from an industry perspective, these are some of the things that are affecting your industry that you need to consider. And then you go from a global perspective. These are some of the things that you need to consider that globally, these are how companies are being affected by COVID, and these are how they're pivoting their strategies to adapt. So that is the top-down, and this one is the bottom-down approach, which is a useful analytical analytical thinking technique to use when you have to instill a very big problem into a narrow one that provides as much insights and tangible outcomes for your objective at hand. Now, the last thing to think about as well is that in order to get good at analytical thinking skills, practice makes perfect. So there are 4 ways to master analytical thinking. So the first one is you need to learn by doing. So you actually need to do the work and follow the process as frequently as possible. And then use the 5 whys for so that you can be able to always be finding a way to distill the problem in a way that you understand it, but most importantly, remember to collaborate. Second is that learn from your mistakes and notice your patterns. You're never going to get the process right the first time. So learn by doing. Practice makes perfect. You'll be able to identify in the first instance for the problem at hand, these are the strategies and the solutions that worked. So bank those and continue to use them. And then also be mindful of mistakes you make. Perhaps you're not applying the 5 whys, or maybe they're not relevant in the context at hand. So, and then notice the patterns where they are effective, where the 5 whys is effective and when it's not. And then find a ways by which you can identify an alternate solution from the 5 whys. The third thing is that develop the confidence in it. So you become confident or a master by doing it as often as possible. And then stress test it and validate whether your solution or your way by which you apply analytical thinking is effective. So ask yourself, can I stress test this methodology with somebody else? And how do they receive it as we work through it together? And then the most important thing is that become a master of it. So you become a master by noting what works and what doesn't work. And as the saying goes, we become what we repeatedly do. So that is the ways by which you can be able to apply analytical thinking in a nutshell. There are many bodies of work around it, but I thought it would be great to share with you guys for the purposes of time and not to inundate you with too much information on this methodology around using the 5 whys, using the top-down or the bottom-up approach as a technique to distill a problem, and then ways by which you can master the process. Are there any questions so far?
Yeah, totally. I approved some questions. I don't know if you get to see them, but otherwise I can read them to you. So the first question we've got from Iman, can you give a practical example of the top-down approach? Then we have Abdelaziz saying, can we apply the 5 whys methods in any sort of ideas, or is it only relevant in certain tasks? And finally, we had Yasmina asking, is analytic thinking part of critical thinking, or is it the same?
Yeah. All right. So the first one is around pretty much a good example of a top-down approach. Okay, so I'll go back to the one that I utilize. So this one here that I downloaded was a company trying to kind of better understand what addressable market could this company actually go into to grow. So how this company applied the process was that they looked at the total market in which they existed in. And then they also looked at the split of the segments by which they could participate. So this is a company trying to say, we see that at this moment in time with COVID happening, there is a huge demand for personal protective equipment. We are a company that had been producing things that are similar, but we want to pivot our business to be able to leverage the opportunity that COVID is providing. So they will look at the total market of who, for instance, in Morocco is currently providing PPE for the government hospitals, the private hospitals, amongst other institutions where you need masks so that you can be able to comply with the day-to-day COVID-19 specifications. So you will look at the total market to say who those people are. And then you will go into the second segment of the percentage split by segment. So PPE is what the people at the hospital wear to nurse and take care of the people who are sick with COVID. And then there's the masks that each and every single one of us has to wear when we go into public spaces. And then there are many other components. So you will split them up according to those segments. And then you take into consideration, okay, so if you are based in Marrakesh, what is the likelihood that if you have the capability to maybe 3D print or produce the stuff that the nurses and doctors provide, how quick to market can you be able to provide that versus your competitors? And then who else is winning in that sector that you would like to compete with? And then you will also go into, okay, what hospitals at a graduate level, what hospitals in Marrakesh or in Casablanca or in other areas in Morocco can you be able to provide this PPE? So it's just a pretty much basic example around going big at the market opportunity in this case, and then narrowing it down to the key addressable market when you analyze all things that can be taken into account that you can serve well and be competitive in. I hope that answers the question.
I guess so. Mosidi, can you confirm if you have access to Q&R feature down in your screen? So that's maybe Q&R.
Yeah, I do. I do.
Amazing. Yeah. So you get to see all the questions directly and then answer them one by one.
Okay, so the first question that I asked was, can we apply the 5 why method? So I answered the one of the logical example. The next question is,
yeah.
Awesome. Can we apply the 5 whys? So wait, the other question disappeared. The other one is analytical thinking part of critical thinking, or is it the same? To be honest, I think there's going to be a lot of similarities or parallels to a lot of the content that's going to be covered during this boot camp. So critical thinking, when you look at body of thoughts, it's actually the one that's more outlined than analytical thinking. I don't think they're the same thing. I haven't gone into great depth to be able to kind of research what the parallels are. But in this body of work around different thinking skills, critical thinking tends to be greater emphasized. But analytical thinking, I think, hinges more around how do you go about solving a problem. Whereas critical thinking is, my assumption is that, have you considered all things that come into account to getting to the solution? So they're not the same. There are parallels, but they're not the same. And then the other question is, can you share with us the process of the first 5 whys, why you applied it on your business? Can you share with us the process of your first 5 whys you applied on your business? So for me, it is just a hypothetical example, but it's a lot more broader than that. I actually just wanted to just follow my passion. And I thought that, you know what, life is too short not to, but it had been a long time coming. And I think every year when I came to that juncture around, why do I want this so bad? The questions were different, but this was just an illustrative example around how I wanted to just show you guys how you can apply the 5 whys to your own lives, but it applies a lot to business problems as well. And then the other question is, is there a book you can recommend about analytical thinking? I haven't come across one, to be honest, at this point in time, but I will do my research. And if I do come across something, I will send it to Hanan and suggest that the group shares it. But my saving grace, to be honest, has been, like, I listen to a lot of podcasts. And when you actually listen to some of these thought leaders, you know, the one that I really like is the one by Tim Ferriss. He interviews a lot of great thinkers, and you can see that, you know, in their process of starting their businesses or going on their life's journey, there is a lot of analytical thinking that goes into the process. So there isn't really a specific book that I have come across that gives you good tools, but if I do come across one, I will certainly give you insights on it. And then the other one is Deming Wheel. PDCA is a fundamental way to better analyze any idea. How can we use the 5 M's and the PDCA to have the best approach possible? I'm not familiar with the PDCA methodology, but I have come across it on several avenues. But like I said, I'm happy to go and do further research and provide you with meaningful insights and give Hanan the opportunity to share them as the program progresses. So the other question is there a case in which the 5 whys approach does not really give the answer that perfectly suits our question, even after repeating the method many times? If so, what can you do about this? Yeah, I suppose that there never is one silver bullet to it. Some problems are a lot more complex beyond asking the whys. But I think it's always a good starting point. The 3 whys, the 5 whys are a good starting point to kind of like get the conversation started or get the thinking started. But a lot, as we go through this very volatile and uncertain environment that we exist in, I am sure that we cannot just rely on the 5 whys to get to the question, but they're a good reference point to get unanimous thinking around what is the problem at hand. And then I'm going to take 2 last questions. Hello, does the learning by doing principle always work? Or are there some prerequisites for it to work? I'm a personal advocate, to be honest, of learning by doing. And I am also an advocate of practice making perfect. Like if I look at some of the most like complex things that I've had to grapple with within my work environment, I can only just learn by doing. I can never like, refer to a body of work or past experiences. Sometimes we don't have past experiences or references to teach us, but I also deeply value going to other people that know better than me. So that is where the learning by doing becomes more powerful when you have a reference point from someone that's always gone the journey. Maybe it could be a senior or somebody who's skilled and experienced in the field, and then you learn from their context in order to solve your problem. And then the last question that I will take is, what is the difference between design thinking and analytical thinking? Or the first is just one of the analytical thinking methodologies. Hamza, you are spot on in terms of being able to identify that there are a lot of similarities between design thinking and analytical thinking. When you go and do a design thinking exercise, and we will touch on it in how it also feeds innovation in the next segment, there are a lot of similarities in terms of analytical thinking as well as design thinking. Design thinking just pretty much advocates for you going to the user in most instances that you're trying to solve for. So those are the people that you will actually ask the 5 whys. Say, suppose you are developing a software platform or a tech solution that you want people to solve for. You will go and ask, somebody who you think is a potential client, why does this problem exist in your life? Why should we do away with the problem? And then the next question is, what can we do about it? So it's analytical thinking is a great tool by which you can use to design for purpose. So there are a lot of similarities, and I think they're not mutually exclusive. They're actually very much aligned. So when you follow the design thinking process, you are inherently following an analytical thinking process as well. So I've banked some of the questions here. For the purposes of time, I'm going to move over to our segment of innovation. I just want to ask Hanan, if you could just bank some of the questions that I have not addressed, and then if we have time later on, I would be more than welcome to go back to them.
Yeah, totally, I'll do that. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. All right, so the next section is the one that I think most of us tend to be excited about, which is this notion of, I'm just trying to stop the question so that we can go to the, I'm just trying to minimize the questions.
I'm taking care of this, Mosidi, so you shall continue, and I'm gonna take care of the questions.
Okay, perfect. So now we're going to move on to this notion around innovation. So the main objective of this session is to unpack critical analytical thinking as well as innovation. So innovation is generally a very broad topic, and there's a lot of how I'm going to unpack it is to look at companies that are really great at innovating. We will unpack who some of those are and what is their secret sauce to success. And then we will also look at this notion of innovation from the 6 things that innovative companies and I suppose individuals do. And then I also want to unpack and share with you somebody who I think is one of the greatest innovators of our time. And, you know, he's just scraped the surface of his capabilities or what we have seen. And I've learned a lot from this individual. So so just to look at this, to put innovation into context, it's always great to look at it from the companies that are actually very good at it, because they're a great example of how you can touch and see innovation. So if you are a big fan of Apple products, who happen to be the #1 top most innovative companies in 2020, so you can touch and feel an Apple product, and you know that once you're an Apple user and you're a big fan, you can't go back. I'm one of those people whereby I've adapted to the products, and I love the way in which they are continuously improving on their features and the usability of the products. So the notion of innovative product innovative companies is that they have a look. These are brands that most of us can recognize, #1. And then, funny enough, most of them are technology companies that are in the top 10. And they're characterized by providing favorable user experience. So I go back to my example of why I prefer, for instance, an Apple phone versus a Samsung or Android phone. So the top 10 this year, we have Apple in the run around. We also have Alphabet / Google, but Google is actually a subsidiary of Alphabet. So Alphabet is Google's holding company that are thinking of an enormous amount of, you know, some of the pressing challenges in society, and they're using this company or this vehicle by which they get really good, talented people to go about solving these problems. The other one is Amazon. Amazon is an interesting example where it actually started out as selling purely books, but then now it is the largest global marketplace. I think its market cap now is in the trillions of dollars. So it also shows that innovative companies oftentimes don't start out doing what they actually meant to do. They're constantly pivoting and evolving into becoming valuable companies. And then the other one is also Microsoft, which we all know, founded by Bill Gates. And then we know Samsung. Huawei is also a very interesting story. I actually have a copy of the autobiography of the founders. Very engaging story of friends who came together and wanted to leverage technology to do good in society. Alibaba.com as well, a fantastic company that was founded by Jack Ma, who really saw from the get-go that, you know, technology and the internet is the future. It is the way by which we can be able to bridge gaps and raise people out of poverty, where he developed this marketplace using Alibaba to serve the Chinese market and beyond. IBM, another company that has been around for years and is constantly evolving, moving into different market segments beyond selling computers to be able to be competitive and provide value into the market. Sony is an interesting example where people say, well, it is very innovative. It is not the most profitable of all these companies if you look at their market caps, but there's something that they're getting right. They're very responsive in terms of being able to reinvent themselves to be relevant in the market. We all know, lastly, about Facebook, the top 10 most innovative company, founded by the young Mark Zuckerberg when he was a Harvard graduate. They now own WhatsApp, and they now own Instagram. And for me, what makes Facebook interesting is that they're very good at identifying what other adjacent or competing companies can we acquire to ensure that our capabilities expands beyond what was originally Facebook. So these are the companies that stand out as being the top 10 most innovative companies in 2020. You can actually get the full report by going to the BCG Global Innovation Survey. So they map out on a yearly basis some of the most innovative companies globally. So just to get to this notion around what are the 6 things that innovative companies do. So #1 is, like, there's this book where I got this extract from. It was written by a guy called Greg Settle. It is a playbook for navigating a disruptive age. It provides a very meaningful and informative framework around how to understand the things that innovative companies do. So the first thing that innovative companies do is that they seek out problems. So for them, it's not just about ideas, but it's about looking into what problems are at hand and what strategic capabilities do we need to acquire that are relevant to our industry to be able to solve them. So innovation is not just about the ideas, but it's about the problems at hand. The second thing is that they choose problems that suit their strategies. They understand that they cannot have a one size fit all, or they cannot be everything to everybody. So they have to be very strategic around choosing problems that are aligned with their company's strategy, their capabilities, and their culture, and then incrementally solving for those problems. The third thing is that they identify innovative strategies that are most likely to solve the problems they save. So it's not like a company like, I don't know, IBM trying to solve problems that Tesla has. Yes, they work in similar parallel industries being technology, but the problems at hand on a day-to-day basis are completely different. So innovative companies identify innovative strategies that phase them hands-on. The other thing is that they leverage and then the other thing to add is that they ask themselves how well, I'm referring to number 3, how well is the problem defined? So to be able to actually understand, are we solving for the right problems? It has to be well defined. Number 2 is how well is the domain defined? So they use this thing called the innovation matrix, which guides you to the process to follow. So is it a problem where we need to kind of look into transforming or innovating our company radically, or is it about incremental innovation? Unfortunately, I actually didn't take a screenshot of this innovative matrix, but if you Google Greg Settle innovative matrix, it will be able to provide you with a lot more context, and you can also read up on some body of work on how this innovation matrix works, which I highly recommend. And then the other fourth one is that they leverage platforms to access ecosystems of talent, technology, and innovation. And I think this one is very important to highlight, that most companies feel that sometimes that they have the best talent working for them, but that isn't so. And now that we are moving more into a gig economy, you're going to find that the problems that are so complex the solutions to them may not necessarily sit with the people that are in your building and so forth. So it's about leveraging platforms to access those ecosystems of talent and technology as well. Like now that technology is becoming increasingly advanced, rapidly so, you can get to the solution much quicker leveraging it and the information that you have, particularly from getting insights from your internal stakeholders as well as your external stakeholders. And then these companies as well, what they're good at is that they build a collaborative culture. So they understand that the answers are not unanimous and that they also value different perspectives from different people. So there's this thing called Enneagram testing, which I highly recommend as a great self-awareness tool that highlights you or categorizes you into 9 numbers. And then it actually just like, it's a great self-awareness tool around how do I show up and how do I go about, seeing the world and thinking about it. So this collaborative culture oftentimes consists of different people coming together who see problems or see life differently, coming together for the common goal of solving the problem, but using their unique ability. And then the last one is that they understand that innovation is messy. There's never a silver bullet to it. Oftentimes they say when you're innovating, you must be prepared to fail fast and fail cheaply, and understand that you may not get the answer at the get-go. The answer or the solution might come much later down the stage. So you have to be patient with the process. So that is the 6 things that innovative companies do. I'm now going to move on to one of my favorite and most iconic people who I think is a great innovator. So his name is Virgil Abloh. I'm sure some of you are familiar with Virgil. So Virgil is the artistic director of the menswear at Louis Vuitton, but he's also synonymously associated with the label or the brand Off-White. So why I love Virgil is that he is the blended skills master. So he actually studied architecture by profession, and is actually a DJ as well. He calls himself Flat White. So he's somebody that refuses to be put in a box, but leverages his talents and abilities and uses collaboration to innovate for society, particularly the most impactful area where we see his work is in the fashion industry. But Virgil has actually done some interesting collaborations, like with music, where he was discovered doing creative direction for Kanye West's consultancy firm called Donda. He also did an amazing collaboration with IKEA, and then also did a great initiative where he reinvented the relevance of the Nike Air Max. So this is a guy who's an architect by profession, but really, really is artistic and is passionate about the arts as well as fashion, and is leveraging his skills and as an ability to be able to collaborate with others to do good in society. Now, I'm really excited about post-COVID when we look at how some industries are going to reinvent themselves. I think Virgil is going to be one of the people that will be leading the forefront around reimagining the fashion industry to be more sustainable, to be more ethical, and to also be more innovative in their approach. And what I love about architects as well is that these are people that really have the privilege or the opportunity to build for purpose. But somebody like Virgil has taken it a step further by saying that I can be anything. Yes, I'm an architect, but I can collaborate with people in fashion, in the design industry, and be able to create products and services that are good for society. So this for me is a great example of somebody who is an innovator at an individual level. And then the other thing is second lastly is how do we go about harnessing a culture of innovation within a company? So I think it all boils down to leadership, where you actually need to have leaders within your organization that give staff permission to be innovative and create a conducive environment by which people can innovate. A culture of innovation as well consists of companies where they become great anthropologists. So these people or the leaders are in the habit of gathering insights. They always make time to go and speak to their clients and internal stakeholders. Apparently, Jeff Bezos is a great illustrator of this, where he doesn't get tired of going to speak about how can we make Amazon better, getting insights from internal stakeholders, being suppliers as well as employees, and the end customer that utilize Amazon's products. And then you also have to develop an experimental mindset. So don't be scared to try something new in a form of an experiment. So things like pilots. So if you're building an app, for instance, you go out and fail cheaply or go and gather insights by running what we call alpha tests, where you give, your product or your app or services to 10 to 15 people, asking them a few questions around what's your thinking of the functionality and the usability of it, what can we do to do it better? So that experimental mindset. And the other thing is that these companies have support, resources, and capacity. So innovation is not something that's done by a group of people within the organization or a team. It's inculcated within teams, and each team allocates time, resources, and has the capability to be able to get better at it. It is also a function of mastery. The more you innovate, the better you get about it. And then the most important thing is that you must not be afraid to think or behave differently. So in the last company that I worked for, they always had this value called independent mindedness. So independent mindedness is that my view of the world may be different from the people in the room, but I want to actually have the courage to show that. So you must not be afraid to think or behave differently. So you're that person that is constantly curious, constantly asking the question. It is a good process by which you can be able to foster your ability to be able to be innovative. And then the most important thing is that those questions that you come up with, don't be afraid to network the ideas. Soundboard them with your peers, your mentors, and your bosses to say, like, I'm thinking about this idea. I think it is a bit out of the box. What is your idea of it? In most instances, 99% of the time is that people are always amenable to helping or redirecting or directing you. Always also be open to their feedback, but don't give up on your idea. Even though it comes against the grail, you may be onto something. And then also don't be afraid of failure. Failure is part of the process. So the sooner you can fail, the easier it is, or the quicker it is that you can go to the right outcome. But companies that are good at harnessing innovation, they factor in the probabilities of failure and embrace it instead of shun upon it. And then also remember that innovation is not about changing the reason for the business's existence or what it is that you're doing. It's always sometimes about just finding means and ways to do things better incrementally. So it's not about disruption in some instances. Most of the time, the disruption comes as a result of you innovating enough to get a use case to say, okay, I think we really need to change things. But oftentimes it's about getting better at doing things better with time. And then before we close, so some of the useful resources in terms of these two topics that I have covered that I suggest and always go back to unpack these topics is YouTube. I call YouTube the greatest university of everything. On YouTube, you can find everything under the sun. All the answers are always there. And it's amazing how it's evolved to be just like this volume of information at real time that you can build on. I'm also a great and avid reader of the Harvard Business Review. They have great articles and contributors around this topic of analytical thinking, critical thinking, strategy, and innovation, and very out of the box and very well written articles. So I advocate that you invest in a subscription of the Harvard Business Review. The other one is the Forbes magazine. They always have very great contributors and articles, slicing and dicing this topic of innovation, as well as in an analytical thinking. Quartz as well is another one that I really, really love. They have a very unconventional but meaningful way of giving good insights, especially around this topic of future of work. It's very digitally engaging and very informative. And then I also am a big advocate of podcasts. Everybody has their own, but there's always great ones that are industry specific or topic specific. So spend time listening to podcasts, even though if the topic is not directly related to, say, innovation or analytical thinking, you always get good nuggets along the way. And then the one book of many that I could recommend around this topic of mastery is This Concise Mastery by Robert Greene. So this is the one book I always, when I want to kind of master a new skill or learn something new, go back to time and time again. It was written by Rob Greene and is completely timeless. So I highly recommend that book. It's such an easy read and provides you with good insights around how do you go about becoming a master at something that is new, you want to learn or you want to get good at. And in closing, so we've got 10, there was a very interesting article that I read from the Israeli professor, Yuval Harari, who wrote books such as Sapiens, like that puts into mind why is it important for us to be going through such things like this boot camp. So he did a talk this year earlier in Davos, where he gave the audience some food for thought around where the future is going. And one of the things from this article that stood out for me was this paragraph that says, old jobs will disappear, new jobs will emerge. But then the new jobs will rapidly change and vanish. Whereas in the past, humans had to struggle against exploitation. In the 21st century, the really big struggle will be against irrelevance. And it is much worse to be relevant than to be exploited. So these are just some few food for thought as to why it's important to participate in meaningful conversations and discussions such as these. So the next session is going to be tomorrow, which will be focused on active learning and active learning strategies. So I thought I will probably zip through this presentation. I did not want to inundate you with too much information, but I also wanted to give as much question to engage with the audience and take questions and answers as well as insights. So this brings me to the end of the presentation. I will share it with the group And then you are more than welcome to refer to it at a later stage. I'm more than happy for you guys to hand it as an offline something to give to the audience. So thank you very much. This is just the beginning. This topic around analytical thinking and innovation is very broad, but I just wanted to impart you with some food for thought to get the thinking going, as it is one of the key skills that we will need to harness to be relevant, to not be irrelevant in the future, as Mr. Harari says. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lucy. Thank you so much. That was amazing, very insightful, and we are getting an amazing feedback in the chat box. So thank you again. I think we still got some questions. So if you still got some time, we can answer them. That is gonna be fine, and I think that our participants are like waiting. Yeah, I had a confusion. Like earlier, you spoke about the innovative matrix or metrics. Matrix. M-A-T-R-I-X. Because I searched in Google and just shared. Okay, so I got it right, guys. So it was the matrix.
You want to pull it up?
No, I've just searched quickly in Google and then shared a template of a innovative matrix. Matrix. So yeah, that's fine. We still got
a presentation as well. If you want to give it as an offline handout.
Yeah, absolutely. We will be sharing the presentation right after the end of the bootcamp. Awesome. So yeah.
I'll include it.
Exactly. We had a lot of questions about, some things you mentioned earlier, such as the name of the podcast or the books, or how they can practice analytical thinking and etc. So we will be definitely, although the record is already available on YouTube, so you can go through that, guys and ladies, and also we will be sharing all the documents with you, so that's totally fine.
So I'm happy to share my top 3 podcasts. So the first one that I always go to, definitely Tim Ferriss's one, the Tim Ferriss Show. I mean, the guy is like a genius. Like, he's an investor, he's a thinker, and he always has mastered the art of podcasting and has got so much credibility to really bring on excellent speakers. So if there's one podcast that always just keeps me thinking a lot, definitely his comes hands down, and I highly recommend that you sign up to his 5 Bullet Friday newsletter. So just go to timferriss.co.com and then sign up to his newsletter. And then the other one is also the Hello Monday by LinkedIn. It's got a lot of future of work related topics. I don't really gravitate towards it as much as I do Tim Ferriss's. So when I go on a long hike, I always just plug in Tim and then listen to it. And then as a female entrepreneur, the one that I really love as well, that also explains people's process of going about innovating for their businesses or coming up with really great solutions, is the Girl Boss Radio with some Sophia Amoruso. So those are my top 3.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Okay, so we are still getting some questions in the Q&A, if you can check them. So we'll be answering these last questions, and because we are running out of time, so the floor is yours for the questions.
Cool. So the other one is from Abdelaziz. How can we achieve an innovative mind thing? I think it's just a case of practice makes perfect. And then always it all boils down to challenging the status quo, and then being brave enough to stand for your ideals, and then being brave enough also to go to people to go and validate your ideas. So how you become innovative is that you challenge the status quo, gather as much facts and insights to be able to validate them, but then always sound check them with people as well. But don't be fearful of being wrong as well. And then the other one is from Basma. What are the steps to give to an innovative solution? So it's the ones that I think the top 8 that I shared. I'm just going to go back 2 steps So it's the one around, so I'm just trying to minimize this. So can't get to it. So it's, I suppose I can't get to it now, but I've got them here in front of me. So it would be the top 8 being the, it boils down. So if you're a leader, giving people the latitude and the opportunity to innovate, and then also being able to gather as much insights as possible, being experimental. It's so much fun when you go out and you try validate ideas to come to solutions, and then also making sure that you have the support, the resources and the capacity to do so. So invest in learning and upskilling yourself around how do I become innovative, get inspired by people that are innovative. Like I spend time on end just listening to Virgil's talks at universities and the questions that people ask him, because I really, really admire how this man as an architect is driving his career and choosing to not be put in a box, to do good for and be influential in his industry. And then don't be afraid of failure. And it's all about, don't remember, it's not about a complete pivot or revolutionizing industries or services. It's just about incremental change. And then you said you kindly mentioned network the ideas. Can you please elaborate on that? So networking ideas is about soundboarding them with other people. So going around the room to say, I think I've come up with something that is unique, innovative, and could provide a meaningful solution to the problem at hand. What do you think? So that's what networking ideas is, just soundboarding them to other people. And then the other one is, Ahmed, please don't forget to take a big picture, like a screenshot with Musiri and the other participants. So I'll leave that to Hanan. And then
well, actually, I don't know if we can activate the cameras. It's not an option in the webinars because we were more like than 190%. But feel free, guys, to screenshot, tag us, share on your Instagram, social media, everything. But thank you so much, though, Ahmed, for your suggestion.
And then I'm struggling to find other questions. Are they?
I can give you the last 3 questions. The last one, actually, we have 2. The last one is from Sukaina. Sukaina is saying critical thinking or analytical thinking. Which one to adopt most in nowadays? And the last one, did you get that? Okay, the last one is Fatima.
Yeah.
All right, and the last one is from Fatima Zahra. How to practice analytical thinking and innovation to bring new ideas as a future entrepreneurs. So these were the last questions. Thank you so much, guys.
Okay, so to answer the first one, Sukaina, okay, the first one around how do you, let me just pull them up again. Sorry.
That's okay.
Where was it again?
Well, can you, sorry, because we are having a lot. Wait, let me, no. We just lost it.
Which one to adopt nowadays? So which one?
Yeah, exactly.
I think both. And there is going to be a course, I think, in the next week or so that unpacks critical thinking in greater detail, facilitated by someone else. But if I think about how, in putting this course content together, how important analytical thinking is, I think it's everything. Like, when you, I'm very curious about how artificial intelligence works, and I'm in the process of trying to better understand, identifying where is it being applied, and then the solutions where there is AI at work, how accurate is the algorithm to what I was trying to deduce of it. So I think it's very important to always just, analytical and thinking is more important than ever, because we can't always take what algorithms tell us being the gold standard. And it's very important to challenge the status quo. And the status quo in the future is going to be more and more machine-led, where we move from this sophisticated way of leveraging artificial intelligence and the way in which it's going to be normalized. And so I would say, both of them are incredibly important. But now that I had the opportunity today to unpack analytical thinking with you, I think it becomes very useful when we have to kind of challenge the status quo, whether it's something that somebody's saying, unpacking it and getting the data points, and also data analysis as well. Like having worked with a lot of developers that are very smart and are building code, the way of thinking as developers, they're incredibly analytical to say, but does it make sense to be building this in this way or that way? So we are all always just like, unconsciously thinking analytically, but it's going to become more and more important as we leverage machines or technology to be able to get to answers. I hope that answers your question, Sukaina. And then the other question was, what is it? Can you, sorry, Hanan, there is one here from another one from Sukaina, but there was the last one that you mentioned. I didn't make a note of it.
It was from Fatim Zahra, actually. The question was how to practice analytical thinking and innovation to bring new ideas as a future entrepreneur.
Okay, great. So the first place to start, I would say, like, do go through the 5 whys with why do you want to be an entrepreneur in the first place. So harness that and challenge yourself to always have a different answer. And then in identifying the opportunity or the gap you want to fill, use the bottom-up approach. So if you're looking at maybe developing an app to solve a problem or bring about a plausible solution, use the bottom-up and the top-down approach to kind of find your sweet spot where you can be able to, address the problem effectively. So that is a way by which you can be able to kind of apply the analytical thinking approach. And then with the innovation is about going out into the world and validating your idea. So where you speak to people and you really, really just ask the question to say, I have this idea, maybe, and have a long-term objective around solving it. So the entrepreneurial process, especially now with this tech business that I'm trying to grow and scale, requires a lot of asking information and getting insights from people so that you make sure that whatever business you're building is valuable for people. So for mine is ultimately going to be an application. So I cannot just build an app that I expect people to come. I have to go validate, if I build this app, will people come? So that is a way by which you can be able to innovate. And then innovating as well is that sometimes when you come up with a business idea, it isn't in existence. So somebody else has already tried to tackle the problem. Maybe it's for, it's a problem that you identified in the US or other markets, but it's not available in Morocco. So the innovative problem will be, okay, this project, this product or service is in America, but I'm really passionate about bringing it to Morocco. So how am I going to take my context, like my country context, and innovate so that the users at hand can be able to find it desirable and valuable for them to use. So that's in short, it's not as easy as that, but the long and short of it is that's how you can be able to use it. Like just start taking your problem and tearing it apart by thinking of it analytically, and then leverage the innovative process to go and find out how valuable will it be in the market and how would you want to differentiate yourself to be valuable with that which you want to offer. And take a long-term view on it. The answers don't always come, sporadically. It took me 3 years to really kind of get to a point where I could articulate the problem that I want to solve with a tech business that I want to build. And when I think of my creative consultancy, the COVID has provided a really meaningful opportunity to kind of make the ideas that I want to cultivate or the business I want to build land on good soil, because I'm all about building socially conscious businesses, and now is the time to be very socially conscious and then providing value to the market for it. Any other question? One last question.
Amazing. I guess we had 2 from Abdelaziz. But if you can move to the slide where you shared your email, so maybe if they still have some questions, they can reach out directly. Sure. But we'll take the last one from Abdelaziz. So he said, I heard you saying that we are evolving and the methods are changing, of course. My question is, what are the main keys to adapt in analyzing our ideas and get the full juice of them, hence produce efficient results. I don't know if I got his question right. We are still not in the slide of your email. If you can
sorry. Is
so
it
guys,
yes, point 4. You
yeah,
can go to
the last
info
one.
Yeah, info@moop, so moop.co.za. I will gladly respond to you within the next day or two. Please feel free to reach out and also connect on LinkedIn. I'm quite actively engaged on LinkedIn as well. So just coming back to the question, in short, it's a very long question. In short, what does he want to know?
You got he said, what are the main keys to adapt in analyzing our ideas and get the full juice of them, hence produce efficient results? So maybe how can we analyze our ideas to get to produce them? I mean, maybe to I didn't get it well, like, to be honest. So if you can maybe clarify that, Abdelaziz, or you can get maybe directly to Mosidi through her email, and you can reach out to her so you can have the full response to your question.
I suppose maybe just to try and take a stab at it, for me, the key, what's worked has always just been like, you know, like always just going to like pointing myself to where the point of wisdom is. So if I know somebody who's an expert or really smart, like, you know, somebody's very good at analyzing problems objectively and they're very open-minded, I always just say, okay, I'm going to go and reach out to that person at some point, get their viewpoint in, but I want to challenge myself to think long and hard to get to the answer myself. Be exhaustive in your approach. So the 5 whys is a good example, but like we said earlier on, it's not the silver bullet. Some problems are just way too complex to just apply that methodology to get to them, but always leverage other people. Like unanimous decisions are very limited decisions. So there's one thing that you take away is like leverage the power of the collective, the people around you. And also, as we evolve into this future of work, yes, there's machines that are, you know, supposedly in inverted commas going to take over, but the human collective are still always going to be the ones that win. So, and my hope is that we evolve into communities that collaborate effectively and are in the habit of it. So where we don't hoard ideas or solutions, but we're always curious around, I wonder, I have this problem to solve. I wonder what Hanan's viewpoint or opinion or perspective is on it. Like I have never ever been disappointed by what somebody else has had to say around a problem that I've had. Like other people's perspectives are always fresh and new, and listening as well is going to be very, very important. I was listening earlier on to a video around, they were saying like, what was Nelson Mandela's key ability or key skill? He had this uncanny ability to just sit and listen. So always learning to be the last one to talk where possible, and just always come up with questions, then being deductive around what the answers are. We never ever as humans have the pure, you know, defined answers to problems.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mosidi.